Welcome to the Cancer Interviews podcast. I'm your host, Bruce Morton, and there are instances on cancer interviews when we beat the drum for the importance of early detection as a means of easing the cancer journey, and this is one of those times. Our guest is Janet Frega of Oradell, New Jersey. She was diagnosed with a form of skin cancer, which she survived because it was alertly spotted, and when it was spotted, she acted on it. So now let's get started, and Janet, welcome to Cancer Interviews.
Thanks, Bruce. I appreciate you having me on.
Wonderful. Glad you're here. And the first thing we want to do, Janet, is the first thing we do all the time, and that is to get to know a little bit about you, exclusive of your cancer journey. So we don't have 20 questions for you, but we do have a few, like where you grew up, what you've done for your life's work, what you're doing now, and what you like to do with your leisure time.
Okay, well, I grew up in Potomac, Maryland, which is right outside of Washington, D.C. I have three sisters, one an identical twin, and I have a brother. I went to college in North Carolina, and that's how I got involved in my career path. I majored in communications. I was a diehard sports fan, and I worked for a radio station down there. And eventually I ended up at ABC Radio Network Sports in New York in the early 80s and was a senior producer there. And from there, I went to WFAN Radio in New York as a senior producer when that first went on the air, and ended up back at ABC. I covered numerous Olympics, Super Bowls, horse racing. You know, you ran the gamut of it. I love sports, and it was my dream job. I enjoyed it. Bruce, that's how I met you, because you worked there with me.
Mm-hmm.
From there, I ended up getting married. I met my husband when I was in college, but we reconnected when I moved to New York. So we got married. I had two daughters, one who's 26. She's a surgical trauma ICU nurse. And my other daughter is 23. She's a special education teacher with a master's in educational leadership down in North Carolina. My husband and I are now empty nesters officially. We live in Oradell, which is right outside of New York, and I am retired. I worked in sports broadcasting, as I mentioned, but then after my daughters were born, I retired from there and I went into being a teacher's aide at a nursery school for 16 years. So I taught 2.5-year-olds, 3-year-olds, and 4-year-olds. And several years ago, I retired from that. So now I'm just enjoying retired life. My husband still works. And like I said, we're empty nesters and enjoying life right now.
Okay, two questions for you based on that. Number one, if you can think back to your time at ABC and being involved with a lot of major events, including Olympics, is there any one event that rises to the top as the biggest thrill, the most enjoyable thing that you covered looking back at that time?
I think it was my experience at the 1984 Olympics in Sarajevo. It was the first time I had traveled outside of the United States, and to go to Yugoslavia was pretty incredible. And it was my first Olympics I had ever covered. And the first one that ABC Radio had really covered on a high scale, or full scale, I should say. So it was one of my most memorable experiences at ABC. I think we all really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. And from there, we did the other ones. But I guess when it's your first one, it's always really special. So that's the one that really stands out as far as my highlight at ABC.
And if I recall about those Olympics, there were certain air quality issues.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes, there were, well, because everybody over there smoked, number one. So you had that. And then also there was major snowstorms too that we had to deal with. I think it was like the second day we were there, we were prepping for the games to start, and it was a major blizzard, and we all got like snowed in, and then you had to try to figure out how to get around and so forth. But yeah, it was really special. And it's funny because during quarantine, I was going through photo albums, and trying to weed things out. And I found my photo albums from all my Olympics because I put those together when I came back. And it was fun just to kind of rehash all that and look at that. And we had a Zoom call with a lot of people that I worked with at ABC over the summer, which was nice to reconnect with. So ABC was a special time, I think, for a lot of us.
Sure was. Now, let me ask you about toddlers, teaching them. What's the biggest challenge with teaching toddlers?
Well, they're toddlers and they have a mind of their own. But it was fun. I mean, I enjoyed it. I love kids, and it was something that I just happened to fall into. It wasn't something I was looking for. My children both went to this nursery school, and after they were in elementary school, the nursery school was looking for somebody like part-time. So they asked me if I would fill in, and I did. That ended up going to a full-time position, and I ended up staying a lot longer than I ever anticipated. But it was fun. I really enjoyed it. The kids were great. The 4-year-olds I really like because that's when they become kind of self-sufficient. They want to do everything on their own. But the younger ones are adorable because, it's like what babes say, I mean, it's just whatever they want to say, it comes out of their mouth. So it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. It was good. It was a good transition for me to find something to do after I was finished with broadcasting and, had my kids in school full time, and I was looking for something to do, but still be able to stay home.
Now, Janet, if you look back, what year was it that you had your diagnosis?
It was 2017.
Okay. Just before that, would you say like in 2016 and 2017, before your diagnosis, would you say you were in pretty good health then?
Well, I'm an asthmatic, so I always had issues with respiratory problems and things like that. But as far as other things, yeah, I'd been dealing with asthma my entire life. So that wasn't something new, but I had no other, major injuries. I had, some hip issues that I needed surgery on. But as far as that was really about it. I had nothing else that I really was worried about.
So if you would, let's jump ahead to the time in which something potentially cancerous was spotted. How did that happen, and how was it spotted?
Well, it's very interesting. So my oldest daughter, who is the ICU nurse, went to the University of Michigan, and my husband and I were up in Ann Arbor for her graduation. And I was sitting in the hotel room on the bed, and I had a sleeveless shirt on. And my daughter was sitting on the other bed, and she looked over at me and she goes, "What is that on your arm?" I go, "What are you talking about?" Now, this is like on way back on the back of your arm. It's not like, it wasn't like on the front of my arm. It was way back on the back of my arm. And I said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I don't know what," and I'm kind of looking, and she comes over and she looks and she says, "You need to get that checked out when you get home." And I said, "Well, what is it?" She goes, "I'm just telling you, you need to get that checked out." And I was like, "Okay." She was like, "When was the last time you were at the dermatologist?" And I will have to say that this was 2017. I was going to the dermatologist every year. And then my father became very ill, end of 2015, beginning of 2016. And I thought, oh, I haven't been in about a year because I was dealing with my father going back and forth. He lived in Maryland. I lived in New Jersey. I was working during the week. And then on the weekends, I'd go down there. So I said to her, I said, "Oh, I don't know, probably about a year." She goes, "I'm just telling you, you need to go and get that checked out." So we went to graduation, had a great time. We came home. She came home. She was starting a job at Johns Hopkins in July of that year. So she was coming home and staying with us until she started her job. So as soon as I got home, she was on me. "Did you call the dermatologist? Did you make the appointment?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." So I got on the phone, I made the appointment, and went to see the dermatologist. And I went in, and she'd informed me that I hadn't been there in almost 2 years. And I was like, "Really?" I said, "I guess time just got away with my dad and everything that we were dealing with." And so she asked me, "Any concerns?" And I said, "Well, I have this one spot on the back of my arm that I'd like you to look at." So she looked at it and she said to me, "Okay, I think we're going to biopsy that." And I'm like, "Okay." And I wasn't overly concerned about it. I wasn't worried. And they biopsied it. And then she says, "I need you to come back in a week, because they put a little stitch in it, whatever." And I'm like, "Okay, that's fine." So that's where that stood. And then I guess I had an appointment the following week. The day before, I get a call from the doctor. And she said, "Hi, Janet." She said, "I just want to make sure that you're coming to your appointment tomorrow." And I said, "Oh, yeah, I'll be there." She goes, "Okay, because we need to talk." I'm like, "All right, no problem." So I hung up the phone and I was like, that doesn't sound too good. I mean, we need to talk. So the next day I go to the appointment, and the nurse comes in and she says to me, "So how did you find this? Or did you find it? Or did the doctor find this spot?" And I said, well, actually, my daughter who just graduated from nursing school found it. And the nurse says to me, well, it's a good thing because if she hadn't, you might not be here in a year. And I was like, what? And I go, well, is it cancer? Now, this is before the doctor had even come in. And I was shocked that the nurse even said that to me. So she says, oh, well, the doctor will be in a minute. Well, obviously, I kind of knew then that it was something more serious. So the doctor came in and she explained to me that, yes, it was melanoma, but that I was very fortunate. It was stage 0 in situ, which means that it had not penetrated the epidermis. So it was just all contained on the top layer. She says, however, it has to be removed. And we'll send it out for, make sure we get the clean margins and send it out for more testing and so forth. So I was relieved in that respect that, okay, I caught it very early. But it was also, you hear the word cancer and you're just like, wow, it was scary. So the next week I had to go into another office. They have 2 offices. I had to go to their other office, and another doctor did the surgery. She did it right in the office. They numb your arm. She had to cut it, and she had to go way deep, like all the way down to the fat layer, and get clean margins. So, the size of this spot was very small, but I have a scar about like this big because they had to go all the way, go down and then get all the clean margins. And luckily, they all came back good. So I didn't have anything to worry about after, as far as more procedures or going through any more treatment. But they did tell me that I had to get checked every 3 months for the next couple, the next 2 years. And then eventually you go 6 months, and then eventually you'll, maybe once a year. So early detection, and I can't thank enough my daughter. She saved my life. I said to her, you haven't even passed your NCLEX yet, which is the nursing boards, and you've already saved my life. So, I mean, it's just amazing how it all happened and how she just spotted it, because I never probably would have seen it. It was so far back on my arm.
By the way, before we go any farther, we want to remind you, if you like what you see or hear on this segment, we invite you to subscribe to our podcast by checking the links below. Once you're there, you will see a bell icon. And if you click on that, we will notify you when we post a new interview. Now, Janet, through all of this, if I'm hearing you correctly, you sounded pretty unflappable through all this, or was there an instance in which mentally or emotionally you needed support from your husband, Bud, or from anybody else?
Well, yeah, they were great about it. Like when I came home and I said, well, they did a biopsy, and I really didn't think much of it. I thought, I've been to the dermatologist. Okay, I hadn't been there in almost 2 years, but I was going, and I didn't really worry too much about it, I guess, thinking like, oh, you always find spots on your skin and you think, oh, what about this? Oh, we'll remove that, or we'll take a look at this. But my daughter was very, very concerned. She just kept saying to me, you need to get it checked out. And when she just kept saying that, I was just like, okay. But it wasn't until I got into the doctor's office when they actually said, well, yeah, it was melanoma, that I was like, oh, I guess, I need to be like more scared. But when she told me it was stage 0, then I was kind of relieved too, as far as that. I mean, my daughter, who's a nurse, she had a very close friend of hers from high school whose father died of melanoma when they were in high school. And their family has a foundation, and she would run in the race every year, and I walked it. We would do things for their foundation, but you never think it's going to hit you. And so I'm very thankful that I caught it early enough. And early detection, even my doctor said, it's just so important, because if you catch it early, it's a game changer. And even like, that's what that nurse said to me. Like, you think, oh my God, if I hadn't caught it or my daughter hadn't noticed it, how long will I've gone? And she's the one that really pushed me to get back to see the dermatologist, which I've been putting off. Now I make sure my appointments are every 3 months and every 6 months, and I didn't miss one. And if I had to reschedule, I made sure, I got in there. So like they said, early detection is so important.
And it sounds like you're for lack of a better word, policing the situation yourself. Although I think we can agree, you don't want to argue with a nurse. There are no outside forces that are making you adhere to this schedule. You're doing that on your own, it sounds like.
Right. Well, they were very, when the doctor, after she had removed it and everything came back, the margins came back clean, she said, you need to be here every 3 months. We need to check you every 3 months. So I was very diligent about that. I will have to admit, when she said, okay, well, now you've passed the 3-month mark, you can go to every 6 months. I was kind of nervous about that. I'm like thinking, really? I said, I don't need to come every 3 months. It was like that security blanket that, okay, every 3 months I'll get checked. So if they find something, it'll be okay. Then you go every 6 months. And I will say it was kind of playing a little bit of mind games with me, like, okay, do I need to go every 3 months? Maybe I should just schedule it every 3 months just to be, proactive about it. But, I look on my skin now. I try to look back and see if there's anything that I notice. And it's interesting because it's the spots that I'll go in and say, well, I noticed this. And she goes, oh, no, that's fine. That's fine. I'm like, oh, okay. So it's the spots that you really think you should worry about. It's the ones that you don't think are the ones that you probably should be more concerned about. And the other thing I had to do when I was diagnosed is my daughters both had to go in to the dermatologist and get a baseline exam, because can be hereditary. So they both had to get baseline exams, and I had to notify all my siblings and tell them to go if they hadn't been, but most of them had been going to the dermatologist, but then they had to tell their dermatologist that I had been diagnosed, just so they were aware of it. And I also had to notify all my doctors, my gynecologist, my primary care, my dentist. People don't think about that. You have to let your dentist know. Any doctor I had to go see, I had to let them know too, and put it on my chart that I'd been diagnosed with this.
And were your daughters good about going in and getting checked up?
Yeah, they were great about it. They had no problems. We go to the beach every summer down in South Carolina. And this happened to me in June of 2017. And in July, we were going to the beach. And I had said to my doctor, I'm really nervous. I mean, we go to the beach, and she's like, Janet, you'll be okay. She says, you need to wear sunscreen, A#1, and you need to keep reapplying it. You can't sit out there and think one application is going to cover you for the day. Stay under an umbrella and wear a hat. And I was like, okay, now I will say before this, I would go to the beach, I'd buy sunscreen. Was I diligent about reapplying it like we go into the ocean or whatever? No, I wasn't. And, did I always wear a hat? Not always. My husband was the one who was always under the umbrella, always wearing a hat, always applying the sunscreen and so forth. And my daughters, being that they're young, were always sitting out, and I'd always say, make sure you have sunscreen on, but we weren't diligent about reapplying it all the time. And that was the one thing, every couple hours, like that July, I went down, I was really nervous. I stayed under the umbrella, I had a hat on, and I was constantly applying sunscreen. And my daughter said to me, well, you're not going to come out from under the umbrella? And I said, I will eventually, but then I wore a shirt, because it was on my arm. I didn't want to expose that. So, that first summer, it was kind of, really playing in my mind. And I was really on my kids about, make sure you apply that sunscreen. And they recommended Neutrogena sunscreen. So I always use the Neutrogena, and also on your face, your hands, everything, and even on your feet, your legs, just make sure you get it all. And I would make sure that somebody would put it on me so that I wasn't missing any spots.
Now, you had talked about your daughters and their being good about going in to be checked up. What about your sisters?
Yeah, well, they had all my sisters and my brother, they had all been going to the dermatologist on a regular basis too. So they were good about that as far as, going in and letting them all know. Actually, my brother, I called him and he says, oh, actually I have a dermatologist appointment tomorrow. I remember him telling me that. And I was like, all right, make sure you tell him this, So yeah, they were fine about it. My mother, they told me to notify my mother, and my mom is 92, or she'll be 92 this August. And she's like, I'm not going to the dermatologist. I'm, 89 years old or 88, And I said, all right, well, I'm just letting you know. So when you do go to the doctor, you just let them know, But she stays in the house. I mean, she's not out in the sun and so forth. So, but yeah, it was, got to make sure you get everybody and notify everybody and let them know and make them aware of the importance of, going at least once a year to the dermatologist.
And has that been a difficult thing? Is there anybody in your circle of family and friends that you have told about this who have been less than diligent about going to the doctor?
Actually, no, I think like my friends that I told, they were like, oh, wow, and they go to the dermatologist, but now I think they're even more, like I said, you don't even realize it. I said, it was like this, just a small little speck on my arm and it was black. That was the other key. Like my daughter said, it was black. It wasn't like a brown or a light, it was black. And so my one sister was like, she came over and she's having my daughter look at her, going, look at my skin. Do I have it before I go to the dermatologist? Is there anything I should point out? But no, I think, a lot of my friends all go to the dermatologist, and I think everybody is so aware of it now because, it's spoken about so much. I mean, when I was growing up, it was back in the 70s. I mean, we were sitting out in the sun baked in baby oil, and you didn't really use sunscreen. It was all baby oil and like reflectors. I remember sitting in college, like in the spring in the courtyard with like reflectors and baby oil on us. I mean, not smart, but that was it back then. You didn't really think much of it. And trust me, I had some brutal sunburns when I was younger. So I consider myself very fortunate considering how I really did when I was younger as far as the sun is concerned. And so now, like, every time I even wear makeup that has SPF in it, just to protect it. Because they even tell you, even when you're going out just for like a walk, you've got to have the sunscreen on.
Our guest is Janet Frega of Oradell, New Jersey. She survived a form of skin cancer, and she was able to do that via early detection, which is the primary message that we have in this interview. Janet, let's expand on this, what you just mentioned. Just from where you sit, and obviously you don't know every woman out there, but you think generally speaking, women are aware of this of makeup that provides protection from the sun?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of makeup now does have SPF in it because of all the talk with skin cancer and taking care of your skin and that type of thing. So I think a lot of makeup does have that now, and you can find it in any makeup store. So it works well, and I think it's very important. My doctor even said that if you can find it, wear it. Make sure you have it on. So yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, if you want to find it, you can find it. And most of them have it, so.
Now, I think the answer to this yes, no question is probably a no, but I'll ask anyway. When you had this growth, this spot removed, did that accompany necessity for any medication, anything orally you had to take, or was the procedure pretty much done when the spot was removed?
Well, they removed it and it was stitched up. So I had a huge bandage on my arm and it had to be changed every couple of hours and so forth. So luckily my daughter, who's the nurse, was here because she was taking care of it. And it's funny because they told me, I was going to need to change it. So to go get Band-Aids from the store and so forth. So I bought the big Band-Aids. Well, that didn't cover it. Like my daughter had to run down to the store because the scar is pretty big. I mean, it's a good length scar for just a tiny spot, So yeah, they Tylenol, Advil, for the pain. And then I just had to take care of it. And then I had to go back to them a week later so they could look at it. I think I had to go back several times just to make sure that it was healing properly and that it looked okay. But I have a scar there, and it reminds me every day of how lucky I am that I was able to catch it early and luckily not have to go through any treatments or anything for it, just have it removed, and then be very diligent about taking care of my skin and going to the dermatologist. And I will say, during quarantine, it was interesting. Last March was my appointment, and it was my 6-month appointment. And my doctor called and canceled because around here, I live in northern New Jersey, and obviously we were hit extremely, extremely hard in the beginning of COVID. I mean, everything shut down around here. Nothing was opened. I live in Bergen County, and we're right outside of New York. So a lot of people travel to and from New York, work in New York. So it was running rampant around here. The hospitals here were overflowing. So doctors' offices were shut down. And I was just like, yikes. And this was before all the Zoom calls and so forth. So they called and said that they had to cancel, which I understood. And then I was like, okay. And then I guess it was a couple of months later, they were doing the Zoom calls. But I said, it's kind of hard to do Zoom calls for a dermatologist. Like, oh, can you look at this or see this? And you're putting your hand in front. I said, it was kind of hard to do that. So, I mean, I called, I did a Zoom call with her, and I said, well, I don't really see anything, but I can't really see my back, and things like that. You know better. And she said, well, when it opens back up, she goes, I'm sure you're fine, but if you do spot something, call me and we'll figure something out. So I finally went back. I guess it was in January was my first appointment. So it was a really long time. And I was so nervous because I hadn't been, and I hadn't had somebody really look at my skin, and my doctor wasn't back in the office. So I was seeing another dermatologist in the practice, but she was great. I said to her, I'm really nervous. I said, I haven't been here. I said, not that I think I have anything to worry about, but you never know. And I got a clean bill of health. She said, nope, you're good. I said, all right, well, I think I'm going to come back in 3 months just to be sure, because I hadn't, been in so long. So I have another appointment in 3 months with her. But I will say it was a little nerve-wracking my first time back in after having really not seen them for almost a year and a half, because it was a 6-month appointment in March, so I hadn't seen them since the fall of 2019. So it was, but like I said, everything was good. I was happy. I was like, hey, great. And we haven't been to the beach or anything because of COVID. So I've been outside walking and so forth. But as far as, going anywhere, I felt good about that too, because I hadn't really been anywhere that, might have exposed me to the sun more than I, as far as going for a walk.
Well, Janet, perhaps wittingly, perhaps unwittingly, you have underscored an operative word that we cancer survivors use, and that is that we survive cancer as opposed to beating it, because you don't know when it can come back, and you're certainly passing along that message that that even though you got this spot removed, you can never become complacent or think that you have it beat. So that's
Exactly.
a good thing. That's a good thing that you go back to the doctor, and you want to go back with regularity.
Right. You want to be very proactive about it, and making sure that, my daughters, my sisters, my brothers, they're all proactive about it as well. My husband, he, like I said, he's always the one lathering up with the sunscreen and the hat, and wears like a shirt all the time, when he's on the beach. And he's always one now. It's like, do you have the sunscreen on? Do you have your sunscreen on? This and that. So I think everybody needs to be more aware, proactive about it. And, just think, okay, just because it was stage 0 and, you didn't have to go under any treatments aside from removing it, that doesn't, necessarily mean that, okay, you're in the clear, you don't have to worry about it again.
Okay, Janet, we're going to wrap up now. And under our format, we always start from the same place, wanting to get to know more about our guest, exclusive of their cancer journey. And we always end from pretty much the same place. And I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm 99% sure I already know the answer, and the answer might be a bit redundant, but the answer to this question is one that cannot be overstated. So we always like to end up asking our guest, if you had a private audience with someone, say outside of your circle of family or friends, if you had a private audience with someone who had just been diagnosed or learned that they are a candidate for a form of skin cancer, if there was anything you would say to them, what would you say?
Well, I think, being proactive about it, seeing your doctor, listening to your doctor, taking the precautions, the necessary steps. It's just so important, I mean, when I heard the word, I was like, yikes, like, how bad is it, until like the doctor came in, like I said, I was fortunate. Mine wasn't like, so serious that I had to undergo treatments. But I said the key is, listening to your doctors, and also listening to yourself. If you see something, even if you're not sure, bring it up and ask them about it, because you never know. I mean, like I always point out spots and there could be lots of them. And she's always like, oh no, that's fine, Janet, that's fine. But I'm not embarrassed by that. I don't worry about it. I'm like, okay. And she even says to me, yes, please let me know if you have any concerns. I will be more than happy to look at it. And, if we need to take it off, we'll take it off. I've had other spots removed, none were cancer, but I've had other spots removed too. But, listen to yourself and make sure that you really take a good look at your body, what you can see and notice if there's anything that's gotten, bigger or whatever. Bring it up and talk to your doctor about it and make sure that you stay on top of your appointments. It's so
And
key.
that can result in the two most important words in our conversation, Janet: early detection.
Early detection. That's what really made the difference in my case, 100%. And like I said, I thank my daughter for that, for noticing it, because who knows if I ever would have noticed it, because it was so far back in my arm. But that's why I'm saying that, you got to get to the doctor. You've got to, be proactive about it. Wear your sunscreen, protect yourself when you're in the sun. I mean, you can, and even like my doctor said, you can go in the sun. It's not like you can't go in the sun. You just got to take the steps to protect yourself when you're in the sun.
Okay, Janet, that's it for this segment. We really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for a message that will always be timely. So I guess we can call it a timely message: the importance of early detection. Janet, thanks so much for talking with us.
Bruce, thanks so much for having me. Have a great day.
You too.
Okay.
That's going to wrap up this segment of Cancer Interviews. We hope that what you heard can help the cancer journey for you or a friend or a loved one. So until next time, we'll see you on down the road.
Thanks for joining us today. For more information, please visit us online at cancerinterviews.com. We appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you back here again next time on the Cancer Interviews Podcast.